In our previous video, we looked at describing the intervals where a graph could be increasing or decreasing. In this video, we're going to take a look at what happens at the point where we switch from increasing or decreasing. For example, right here I'm decreasing, then all of a sudden I change directions and start increasing. Well, what happens is that my graph hits a minimum value. I hit a low point, the bottom of the roller coaster. Vice versa, if I'm increasing and then switch to decreasing, I hit this maximum point. We call these points local mins or local maxes. The actual plural are these minima and maxima, although I don't really use those, I just like the mins and maxes. So let's go ahead and describe the minimum or maximum values along this graph, and I'm going to show you how we can answer really the same question, but we can answer it in different ways depending on how they ask the question. So for example, they may ask you to find the x values where a minimum or maximum occurs. So this time they're asking for a local minimum. Well, this graph actually has two. We don't care just about the lowest point, we care about any low points. And so here's a local minimum, and here's a local minimum. And once again, this question just asks for the x values. Well, one place that occurs is when x is equal to -1. Another place that occurs is when x is equal to 3. Now these are not a coordinate, so don't put those together. They're just two numbers. In fact, I would probably just do this so I remember what they are. X is -1 or x is 3. They may also ask you, slightly different question, they may ask you specifically what are the local minimums or maximums. In other words, what's the y value? What is the actual low point this graph gets to? And so there are two low points to this graph. This first one on the left, the low point's actually 1. This point, the low point is 0. So when they ask just for the minimums, they really just want the y values. And then just to make it even a little more confusing, they could also just say what are the coordinates, the x and y values. This time they ask for a local maximum. The graph has one high point, which occurs right here. And so because they asked for the coordinates, I would just say, well, the local maximum, the coordinates of it are 1, 0. Now just one quick note about the word local maximum or local minimum. The reason we say that is because if you look, this graph, if you think about how high it goes, these arrows means it goes up forever. So it doesn't really have an overall maximum, it goes up forever, but locally, we could talk about that local maximum right there. Let's go ahead and take a look at how to find local maxes and mins on a calculator as well, although hopefully by this point you've seen it, you know how to do it, but I'll show you again in this video just in case you need a refresher on that. So we just looked at finding maximum and minimums just from a graph. Let's go ahead and take a look at how to use a graphing calculator to do this. So I believe you've done this before, I've done videos about it, but here we go one more time. So here's the equation they want us to find any local maximum or minimum values for. So I've gone ahead and already typed it into y equals, so please do the same thing. I can hit graph and take a look and see what I would see. And so I can see, okay, there are two. There's a local maximum up here, there's a local minimum down here. Well, this is just my standard 10 by 10 window. Notice this time though, they did tell me to just find any max and mins between this domain. And so those may or may not fit. Let's go ahead and change our window so we only see those x values. The easiest way to do this is just set those as your x minimum value and your x maximum value. And we'll see if that shrinks the graph or changes what we see. Because they don't want all the mins and maxes, just any between 2 and -2. So if I hit graph now, I can see this, and well, sure enough, it's basically the same looking graph. I have one minimum up here which does fit, or one maximum up here which does fit in my new window, in my new domain, and one minimum. So to find these values, hit second and trace, and you'll see option 3 and 4 are your minimum and maximum options. So it doesn't matter which one you find first, I guess let's just find minimum first, so select option 3. They're going to ask you to go to the left and go to the right and then guess. So here's my minimum value, I'm to the left of it, so just press enter. You don't need to get too close to it, just make sure you don't miss it. So if I move my cursor over here, that's clearly to the right of the minimum, so press enter, and then guess can just be there, it doesn't matter. And we should find our minimum value. So right there is the lowest point this graph gets to. I've gone ahead and rounded off a little bit, I think that's acceptable to do. So I've rounded to a few decimal places, and then we're going to repeat, do the same thing for the maximum. So select second trace again, press second trace. This time I want option 4, the maximum value, and I need to move to the left, so cursor's got to go way over here. Probably quicker for you guys to do than watch me do this. Don't get too close to it, so that should be fine over there. My calculator shows this line show up, you may just see that arrow over there. Move over here to the right. Those two arrows or two lines The maximum value should be between those, or your arrow should point at each other. And again, excuse me, for guess, just press enter, and it will find the highest point in between there. So there's my maximum value. There's the coordinate of it. They may remember ask just for the x value, which would be this. They may ask for what is the maximum value, which is this right here. Or they may say put them together and give me the coordinates. So just be ready to answer any of those questions.